The Arizona sun was a cruel master, painting the land in gold and blood. Jack Turner had been riding since dawn, chasing stray cattle through the twisting ridges of Red Mesa. The desert wind carried only the sound of cicadas and the creak of his saddle, until a scream split the stillness. He yanked the reins hard, dust rising beneath his boots as he scanned the canyon below. There, clinging to a narrow ledge, was a woman. Her hands scraped raw, her long black hair whipping like fire against the rock. One false move, and she'd be gone. Jack didn't think. He acted. He spurred his horse forward, sliding from the saddle with a rope in hand. His heart pounded against his ribs, sweat blurring his vision. The drop was near 40 feet, a deadly fall. He tied the rope to his saddle horn and tossed the loop down, shouting over the wind, "Grab on!" For a moment she didn't move, only stared up at him, proud, defiant, as if even death had to earn her surrender. Then slowly she reached. Her fingers brushed the rope, trembling but strong. Jack braced himself, boots digging into the earth as the tension snapped tight. The grit tore into his palms, pain lancing up his arms, but he didn't let go. The woman slipped once, a scream tearing from her throat as loose stones scattered into the abyss. Jack cursed under his breath, muscles straining. The rope groaned, the saddle creaked, and then, with one final pull, she was in his arms. Her weight knocked the air from his chest as they tumbled to the ground. For a moment, all he could hear was the thunder of his pulse. When he looked down, she was staring back, fierce, breathing hard, her eyes reflecting the same wildness that filled the land. "You're safe," he said, voice rough. She didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and edged like flint. "I did not need saving." Jack almost laughed, not out of mockery, but admiration. "Could have fooled me," he said softly. She sat up, clutching her arm where the skin was torn. The sunlight caught the beads in her hair, turquoise and bone, symbols of a people he'd only heard stories about. He fetched his canteen and offered it, but she hesitated before taking a sip, her gaze never leaving his. "What's your name?" he asked. "Nayeli," she said, her tone carrying centuries of pride. Jack nodded slowly. "I'm Jack Turner." He wanted to say more, but words seemed fragile out here, like they'd break if spoken too loud. Instead, he checked her arm, wrapping it gently with a strip of cloth torn from his shirt. She didn't flinch, though her jaw tightened. "You're far from home," he said after a while. Nayeli looked toward the distant cliffs, where the red rocks met the pale sky. "Home is not safe," she murmured. That was all she offered. No details, no plea for help. Jack didn't press her. The desert had its own kind of silence, and he'd learned to respect it. As the wind settled, Jack led her to his horse. "We should head north," he said. "There's a creek not far." She didn't answer, but followed, walking beside him rather than riding. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, meaningful, as if the land itself was listening. When they reached the stream, she knelt to wash the blood from her hands. Jack watched her reflection ripple in the water, strong, proud, yet fragile beneath the weight of something unseen. He wondered who she was running from, or what. When night fell, they made camp near the canyon's edge. Jack built a small fire, its glow flickering across her face. The flames brought warmth, but also shadows, and in those shadows he saw the pain she hid. "You don't have to talk," he said quietly. "But if you need to, I'll listen." For the first time, her expression softened. "You are kind," she whispered, "but kindness can be dangerous." He smiled faintly, staring into the fire. "So can saving strangers." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain. Nayeli leaned closer to the flames, her eyes reflecting the dance of light and darkness. "Why did you help me?" she asked at last. Jack looked at her, really looked. At the dirt on her skin, the cut on her lip, the strength in her stare. "Because no one deserves to fall alone," he said. She turned away, her breath catching in the silence. When the storm finally came, they huddled under the outcropping, the fire struggling against the wind. Nayeli spoke then, her voice almost lost beneath the thunder. "The men who chased me, they will come again." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then they'll find me waiting," he said simply. Nayeli met his gaze, the kind of look that said she believed him, even if she didn't want to. Outside, lightning split the sky, and for an instant, the canyon blazed like fire. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, hanging on that ledge, her defiance, her courage. He didn't know her story, but he knew it wasn't over. Saving her had stirred something inside him, something reckless, something raw. The desert had a way of stripping a man down to his soul, and tonight, Jack Turner's soul was no longer his own. He glanced over at her sleeping form, the firelight tracing her face. For the first time in years, he felt a pull stronger than fear, stronger than the land itself. He didn't yet know it, but that single act of rescue had already rewritten both their destinies. The cowboy who saved the Apache woman had crossed an invisible line, one that led not towards safety, but towards something far more dangerous: love. The days that followed were carved from dust and danger. The desert stretched endlessly ahead of them, each sunrise painting the sky in fire and gold. Jack and Nayeli rode side by side, saying little, their silence speaking louder than words ever could. Behind them, the tracks of pursuit marked the sand, soldiers searching for an Apache escapee, men who believed they were upholding the law. But Jack knew better. He had seen the fear in Nayeli's eyes, the kind that didn't belong to a criminal, but to someone who'd already lost everything. They camped in the canyons by night, hiding from the heat and from men who carried rifles and hatred in equal measure. Nayeli moved with quiet grace, her every action purposeful, gathering wood, watching the horizon, whispering prayers in her tongue. Jack watched her from across the fire, unable to tear his gaze away. There was something in her presence, a calm, fierce beauty that made even the wild land feel alive. He didn't speak his thoughts. Some feelings were too big for words. One night, as coyotes howled in the distance, Nayeli told him her story. Her tribe had been pushed from their land. Her people hunted like ghosts in their own mountains. She had fled when soldiers burned their village, hoping to find survivors beyond the cliffs. Her voice broke only once, when she mentioned her brother. Jack listened in silence, jaw tight, his hand gripping the earth. "You've lost much," he said quietly. "So have you," she answered, her gaze steady on him. He looked away because she was right. The next morning, they rode east toward the San Pedro Valley, following a dry riverbed. Jack could feel the weight of their choices pressing closer. He was no outlaw, but by saving her, he had become one in the eyes of the men who ruled this land. Still, he didn't regret it. The farther they rode, the more he realized something had shifted inside him. He no longer felt like a man of fences and cattle. The world seemed bigger now, harsher but also more honest. When the soldiers finally caught up, it was near dusk. Jack spotted the dust cloud first, a dull blur rising behind them. "Keep riding," he said, pulling his rifle from the saddle. Nayeli turned, eyes wide. "You can't fight them all," he smiled faintly. "Never planned to." He led her into a narrow ravine where the rocks offered shelter. The first bullet whistled past, striking stone. Jack fired back, the echo rolling through the canyon like thunder. The soldiers shouted, closing in. Then a silence. Minutes passed. Jack's breath came heavy. He'd counted 5 men. Only 2 remained. When he peeked around the boulder, he saw them retreating, dragging one of their wounded. He lowered the gun, heart pounding. "They'll be back," Nayeli said softly. "Then we keep moving," he replied. She touched his arm. "You risked your life for me again?" He looked at her, dirt streaked across her cheek, the fire of survival still burning in her eyes. "Wasn't a risk," he said. "Just something that needed doing." That night, under the vast Arizona sky, they shared a silence that felt like peace. Nayeli sat beside him, tracing the constellations with her finger. "My people believe those stars are the spirits of the ones we've lost," she said. "They watch us even when the world forgets." Jack followed her gaze. "Then I hope they're proud of you," he said. She smiled faintly, the light of the fire glinting in her eyes. "And of you," she whispered. Days later, the land began to change. The red cliffs softened into rolling desert hills. Jack knew what that meant. They were nearing Apache ground, the homeland she'd been trying to reach. He felt the truth of it settle in his chest like a stone. This was the end of the trail. They couldn't keep running forever. When they reached a ridge overlooking a hidden valley, Nayeli stopped her horse. Below, smoke rose from campfires, her people. Jack swallowed hard, not trusting his voice. "You're home," he said finally. She nodded slowly, her braid catching the wind. For a long time neither spoke. Then she turned toward him, her hand brushing his cheek. "You gave me my life," she said softly. "Now take back your heart." But he couldn't. The look in his eyes said it all. The kind of pain that only comes when love is found too late. "It's already yours," he said quietly. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "If you stay," she said, "they'll kill you." Jack smiled faintly, that tired cowboy grin she'd come to know. "Reckon that's one way to die for something that matters." She shook her head, placing her hand over his chest. "You've done enough. Let the wind carry us both." Then she pressed her forehead against his, a gesture of farewell, older than language itself. The world went still. When she rode down toward the valley, Jack didn't follow. He sat there on his horse, watching until she disappeared into the horizon. The wind picked up, carrying her name like a ghost across the mesa. He knew he'd never see her again, but he also knew that somewhere, in that hidden camp below, a woman with eyes like fire was alive. And that was enough. As the sun dipped low, painting the desert in gold and shadow, Jack turned his horse toward the setting light. He didn't know where the trail would lead next. Maybe back to the ranch. Maybe nowhere at all. But one truth stayed with him. He'd gone to save a life and lost his own heart in the process. And though she was gone, her spirit lingered in the wind, in the stars, and in every step he took from that day forward. That was the thing about the Wild West. It could take everything from a man, yet still leave him with something worth remembering. For Jack Turner, that something was Nayeli, the Apache beauty he saved, and the love he could never keep. Beneath the endless Arizona sky, that was enough.